Welcome from the International League of People's Struggles, ILPS, to Anti-Imperialist Week 2020. The ILPS is a global network of mass people's organisations which has been active for nearly 20 years. The ILPS is committed to fighting for the human rights and democratic rights of the people, and it's committed to fighting against imperialist war, imperialist aggression and imperialist plunder. The ILPS consists of hundreds of mass people's organisations, and it has chapters in countries and regions across the globe. It's continuing to expand. All of the ILPS member organisations, networks and supporters are committed to Anti-Imperialist Week, the 25th to the 31st of May 2020. In order to help further mobilise the people of the world to fight for democracy and against imperialism. The call for a week of struggle and protest against imperialism, Anti-Imperialist Week, arose from conferences of the people meeting in Cuba and then Venezuela, countries that are in the front line of the fight against imperialist aggression, war and plunder. The ILPS strongly supported and supports such a call and restates its determined support for the courageous resistance being waged by the Cuban and Venezuelan people and many other peoples of the world in fighting for peace, justice, independence and liberation. Imperialism has continued to bring disaster after disaster to the people for over 120 years. Pandemics, depressions, recessions, constant wars, including 2 devastating world wars, fascism, mass hunger and deprivation, destruction of the environment, poverty, homelessness, 70 million refugees and much, much more. We have as yet not seen the full impact of the COVID crisis, and yet the capitalist authorities are rushing to restore the situation to the so-called normal, which is a quick return to the neoliberal agenda, which is forcing disastrous policies onto the world's people and implementing even more reactionary agenda on the world's people, including the further growth of fascist measures and repression. In the midst of a global pandemic, which is highlighting the failure of the capitalist system to serve the people yet again, the ILPS is issuing a call as part of Anti-Imperialist Week to end the ongoing attacks on the wages of workers and other toilers, to end austerity and social cuts, to end attacks on human rights and democratic rights, and to end attacks on the global environment. Whilst mobilising against these evil attacks, we call on the people, the workers of the world, to unite around the solution of changing the social order from a system based on profit for the few to a system which benefits all workers and other toilers. In closing, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the rest of this video will be highlighting some of the activities of the mass organisations of the ILPS and others in dealing with the capitalist crisis and the pandemic in their countries and regions. I trust you will find this interesting and inspiring. Long live the people's resistance to imperialism. Long live international solidarity. Thank you.
We have big challenges that far exceed, in my opinion, the coronavirus issue. We have the wars, we have the occupations, and we have the sanctions. We feel that hell broke loose in our region, and these 3 factors amplify the danger of corona, of course. I would like to give you some insight into some areas. I will speak about Yemen as an example. We have talked with our members in Yemen in our network, and the situation there, I'm sure you are all aware of. the horrific war in Yemen. The conflict that started 6 years ago is still on. In spite of the corona problem, the coalition has resumed the bombarding, air bombardment of Yemen, and the UAE and which said they will stop their aggression, they did not do it.
And lastly, for the corona, I'm at the same time a member of the Lebanese Communist Party, and during this crisis, we've been helping with sanitizing some regions, some neighborhoods, and at the same time giving out aid in terms of food and really needed material in this aid. So this is pretty much the situation currently in Lebanon, and what we expect for the coming weeks and months is for the economic situation to deteriorate even more, and for the public backlash to become more and more visible and more.
All of these people are targeted because they continue to reflect and represent the Palestinian resistance. And more than that, they represent a Palestinian leadership, an authentic Palestinian leadership that is being denied that status by a colonial occupation that seeks to instead slap them with a terrorist label in order to isolate them even further, and in order to isolate them on an international level. So we see that the same organizations that the Israeli state labels as prohibited organizations, we see on the so-called terrorist lists of the United States, Canada, the European Union. And this isn't something that's accidental, that while the Israeli army, the US army, and their proxy forces in the region and internationally are committing massive acts of terror against the people of the world.
We are saying that police brutality in Kenya is historical. It has been there since our colonial time. The British government colonial government used violence, police violence, killing, mass incarceration of our people, and curfew to repress our people to fight the liberation movement. So this is historical. The state character that we have today is the same one. It has never changed since independence. So that's why they are using police brutality, killings, and it's widespread. And I tell you, in Madare, there's a lot of police brutality. People are being beaten. Criminalization of poverty. If you're found without a mask, you are arrested, detained, and then police ask you for money. So all this is criminalization of poverty for the poor people.
You know, most of the African countries all implement neoliberal policies, and we've seen the shortcomings of these policies that are here. We should socialize healthcare. We should socialize amenities like water. We should socialize this, but every citizen on the continent has access to these. And if we help our brothers in Senegal and in Madagascar to actually make a reality of these things, the inventions that they've made, then we'll be helping ourselves. We'll be helping ourselves. Then we won't be relying on other products that are coming from China, from Europe, from North America, and so on. We need our own African solutions. Hence, under Pan-Africanism, we are trying to see that to create synergies in all these things that positives that the African continent has produced so far. We are looking for solutions elsewhere, and sometimes we are ignoring solutions that are just in our backyard.
I think it's a fundamental flaw in the way our government is handling this case, but also it depicts the failures of our regimes. It depicts the failures of the systems which our regimes are using to govern, and ultimately the failures of capitalism as a mode of production.
the U.S. is an empire in decline. And this coronavirus and the economic crisis has shown the weaknesses of capitalism in the U.S. and around the world, actually. And in one sense, we welcome crisis because it's an opportunity to be more bold and to organize workers and oppress people to take power and change society and shape it the way we want to see it. So it's a pro-people society instead of a society based on making profits for the few. So who's dying in this crisis? Well, it's mostly older workers. In the United States, African Americans are dying at a very high rate, more than double what their population is in the country. Native Americans also are dying at a higher rate than other people. And a growing number of immigrants and war veterans are also starting to die. And in part, this is because of being incarcerated, held in detention centers or in healthcare centers where they're not getting the attention they need. So as people said, this is the biggest economic crisis in the US since the Great Depression, and the unemployment numbers are about the same right now as they were back then. And before this happened with the coronavirus, we saw that there was weaknesses in the US economy. We saw the manufacturing sector numbers were down, and we were predicting for a long time that there would be a big crisis. So here it is upon us.
This monster has a lot of heads and is operating internationally. And so it's very important that we fight back, not just as a mass movement in one country, but as an international mass movement. And so towards that end, we've been organizing the J1 workers, starting with the education of their rights, doing media exposure, and to push back against the very limited definition of labor trafficking, and to push for change. And it's important to note that trafficking is a part of the neoliberal agenda, where the states play a huge role in legalizing trafficking. And so with that, then the truth is the US state and the Philippine state are some of the largest traffickers in the world. And it'll take a mass movement that is multinational, that crosses borders, and a movement that doesn't just address human trafficking, but addresses imperialism, which has given birth to this scale and nature of human trafficking.
It's important to always start reminding people that the detention system is just extension of the prison system in the US. For those of you outside the US, you might know already that the US is the country with the largest number of people in cages. The US has relied on the prison system as a result of abolition of slavery. It's just another way of controlling Black and brown bodies. The immigration system relies on criminalization. The immigration system in the US is a civil administrative system, yet it's treated as a penal criminal system. So it's very convenient because if you go to a detention center, you see everything that looks like a prison, yet we're told we're not prisoners. And one of the things that works for this system is that, at least in the criminal system, you can get a lawyer if you cannot afford one. But in the immigration system, you don't get one because it's civil. You have to pay your own. So it's a perfect system to keep people detained for sometimes years at the end. And it's the perfect system to create business. Right now, as you've probably seen during COVID-19, there's a lot of efforts to release people from cages. Public health officials have said again and again, confined spaces are the worst place right now for anybody to be in. Look at cruise ships, right? Nursing homes. What happened here in Washington State, we were the first one hit in the United States with COVID-19 cases, exactly in a nurse home. We see just recently some cruise ships are still not allowed to dock into piers, right? Because they still have people that are positive of COVID-19. Yet we have this reluctance from the United States governments at every level, from the federal, of course, to the local, to release people from cages.
The idea is to organize our workforce against what we have and what we don't have. Our workforce is primarily immigrant women of color, women and immigrant women of color. As Berna said before, Latino women, Caribbean women, and African women. And we are here to do the work, doing the work step by step from the ground up.
You're singing the people's song under a starry night, reminding us the struggle's strong, and we will wonder when the fight. Trayvon Marty got us older bragging, and Eric Garner made us lose our breath. Goddamn, goddamn. Oh Lord, goddamn, 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 goddamn. Freddie Gray ends up, but still they hanging. And Sandra Black saying name. Goddamn, goddamn. Oh Lord, goddamn, 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 goddamn. Is it bitter? Is it sweet, sweet? Is it bland? Is it bland, bland? Tell me, is it bitter? Is it sweet, sweet? No, is it bland? Is it bland? Strange fruit hanging from a plastic bag noose. That don't sound right. Then they call it suicide. Like she ain't got no sense of pride. My people ain't no fooling we. Eyes open, eyes shut, they gon' see. Open all and shut, they gon' see. Is it bitter? Is it sweet, sweet? Is it bland? Is it bland, bland? Tell me, is it bitter? Is it sweet, sweet? No, is it bland? Is it bland? Tell me, do you believe this shit? Hell no, they keep getting away with the same things. Sandra would be turning in her grave if we all just shut up and behave. Silence is the new slave.
Under the cover of COVID-19 health crisis, corporations, big business and governments are making preparations for workers to carry the main burden of this crisis, of the capitalist economic crisis. On the agenda are lower wages, removing the hard-won workers' rights and conditions that we have fought for generations, extending casual, insecure and low-paid work into all industries. They have already called for sacrifices by working people. The Business Council of Australia, which is the main business, business outfit, which dictates policies to Australia's government, and which is comprised of some of the biggest multinationals in the world, is already putting workers and unions on notice demanding that there's going to be increased productivity, there's going to be increased exploitation, that there's going to be more flexibility and removal of red tape, meaning that the basic laws that have been brought in over the years as a result of workers' struggles to protect our health and safety, to protect our rights as workers, are going to be removed.
Also relate to neoliberalism. Currently, the military is being brought in to support the status quo, to support the strong arm tactics of the government, and they are also supporting big business, the big transnational corporations that are being propped up in this neoliberalist type of economy.
Rights violation, war crimes, crimes against humanity continue in ethnic Rakhine areas. So all these actions by the Burma military and the government show a glaring double standard, but the Koreans are not alone in facing this double standard. It also happened to other ethnic people. So while international donors must obviously provide urgent assistance at this time, they also must ensure their aid is not subsidizing the government offensive against their own people.
So the rough figures, as many people give, is that 200 million workers in the country are migrants. They are all suffered all these 50 days like animals lived. No water, no sanitation facilities, no lighting, no fans at the 40 degrees. Today itself, if you see, thousands of people are walking on the national highways with this summer with the kids, small mothers and pregnant women. They are walking thousands and thousands of miles because government has failed to provide, no political will to provide the support for this kind of people.
The Hong Kong Conference introduced some selective measure in closing the border. And you can see, for example, the Hong Kong government closed the border against countries other than China. So people nowadays blame that, oh, Hong Kong government now is doing the selective measures for countries other than China. So they actually, people nowadays in Hong Kong think that the Hong Kong government serves Beijing rather than local people. So there was a moment that in early February, the medical workers went on strike to pressurize the Hong Kong government to close the border against China.
Situations, thousands and lakhs of migrants from the northeastern regions, including people from Manipur, are living in the Indian metropolitan cities. What happened when the lockdown began and when the pandemic spread in India was like, we are being identified with Chinese, and we have been often called as the Chinese corona, and we've been blamed for spreading corona. So there is racial harassment, selective racial harassment. We have reported incidents of hundreds of cases where we are being given slurred remark, mocked at, and in many metropolitan cities, shops were closed, and there was attacks on the streets.
case, an exceptional situation in Italy compared to the rest of the continent. Today, it is clear that Italy was only one of the first countries to identify an outbreak, and that the data of pandemic mortality in Italy are substantially in line with those of many other countries of the European Union. This calls for a general reflection on health services in our continent and particularly in the EU. Although liberal reforms during the last 30 years, inspired by the European Union, have partially compromised the Italian public health system. The high mortality of COVID in Italy, like in some other countries of Europe, was due to multiple factors. However, many deaths could likely have been avoided with a more reliable public health system. The removal of the public health management from local and regional authorities and privatization has jeopardized the central state's actions in the emergency. This is the result of a strategy made by the European Union. The so-called Europe of the regions is a way to destroy the citizenship, the democratic control, and support a fast privatization of the public services.
Many people will know that the region around Kurdistan and just the Middle East region in general has to deal with several big humanitarian crises, which means we're talking about millions of refugees who have been at the receiving end of the pandemic. But at the same time, the authoritarian governments and regimes in the region have also used, similar to other parts of the world, of course, the situation at the moment as a tool to further their oppressive and authoritarian policies. But at the same time, of course, people who have struggled, who have a history of resistance, are also at the same time sometimes better prepared than other people when it comes to moments of crisis. So I can't get into all the details of the different parts of Kurdistan, of course, but I want to say a few things. On one hand, of course, in Syria and in Iraq, not only the Kurdish people, but all the people in the region who have had to deal with several episodes of large-scale violence and war and displacement are now burdened with the pandemic in this way, in a humanitarian sense. And they are struggling to cope with the situation. They're not receiving adequate help, and they're often left to take care of themselves.
The government, the authorities were not providing protective personal equipment, were not providing sufficient testing materials, etc. Were not providing sufficient personnel. So in fact, they said DIY, do it yourself. In fact, literally, they said you have to produce your mouth masks yourselves. And that's what we did. The people did it in their neighborhoods, in their communities. The health workers did it in their healthcare centers, in their hospitals. We, with our Association of Medicine for the People, we bought masks and other protective equipment and brought it to the homes of the elderly, brought it to the hospitals, and developed the solidarity with them. Also, I think some of the previous speakers mentioned the austerity measures and the economies being imposed on the healthcare sector in the previous years and decades of capitalist crisis and of European Union austerity packages being imposed upon its member states. Of course, this all has had a large impact also in Belgium, and especially what preventive measures and preventive medicine, preventive healthcare is concerned, which is almost non-existent in Belgium in an organized structural way.
A version that we do face only a bit different kind of flu as it is spread by certain forces with certain goals. It is a real danger, and we saw a failure of the, what so to say, Euro-American civilization vis-a-vis this danger. And at the same time, I'm quite proud that countries which passed in the past, I mean, a socialist period, were generally much more successful in fighting this danger due to the heritage of the public healthcare advanced and very democratic in the past. I am not ready to get a puppet of a cover story presenting COVID-19 as a cause of an economic crisis, which even the think tanks of transnational corporations and banks are comparing with the Great Depression of the end of the 20s and the beginning of the 30s of the past century. The pandemic we do face today would obviously hit any economy. Those sane ones would, however, overcome it during several months after the end of extraordinary measures. The core trouble today consists in an incomparable crisis of capital overproduction. Better to say, the second stage of this crisis, which started already in September 2008.
Si me permiten, voy a ir trabajando las diapositivas que tenemos preparados para este evento. Empezamos, se intensifican las contradicciones imperialistas y preparativos de la Tercera Guerra Mundial. En medio de la crisis inevitable de acumulación de capital, catalizada y encubierta con la pandemia de COVID-19, que golpea principalmente a la clase obrera y al pueblo en miles de infectados y muertos, con la destrucción de más de 25.000 millones de puestos de trabajo en el mundo, atentando así a la vida y a la salud del pueblo. En Panamá, después de 100 años de ocupación militar, en 1903 se da la separación de Panamá de Colombia. En 1914 inician las funciones del Canal de Panamá en el contexto de la Primera Guerra Mundial. Y en 1999 el pueblo panameño asume la administración del canal. Así demostramos que nuestros pueblos de Mesoamérica tienen una gran tradición de lucha antiimperialista. Resistencia antiimperialista por la liberación nacional. Uno de los triunfos más importantes destacado en Panamá, sin duda alguna, fue la fundación del Partido Comunista en 1930, misma que le dio rumbo a la lucha de liberación nacional y social al pueblo panameño. Hubieron huelgas inquilinarias, huelgas bananeras, mismas que también fueron reprimidas por militares yanquis que torturaron, que reprimieron, que secuestraron, pero la lucha sigue y la lucha siguió hasta constituirse libre de la intromisión yanqui. En medio de la persecución, el Partido Comunista organiza y dirige las luchas populares, conquistan el retiro total de tropas norteamericanas para 1999. Nuevamente, en Estados Unidos invade Panamá con el pretexto de combatir el narcotráfico en 1989. Sigue habiendo ataques militares porque el antiimperialismo del pueblo panameño se continúa expresando en diversas luchas. Es así que las tropas norteamericanas secuestran a Manuel Noriega, se lo llevan a Estados Unidos. Cabe señalar que esta invasión fue de manera terrestre, aérea y marítima, donde hubo cientos de muertos del pueblo panameño. Asimismo, son entrenados en la Escuela de las Américas. El gobierno norteamericano, en sus planes de guerra contrarrevolucionario, ha entrenado desde 1946 a más de 64,000 militares de América Latina. En su doctrina militar contrarrevolucionaria, ha formado a golpistas, dictadores, genocidas, francotiradores y también ha aleccionado en técnicas de interrogatorio, guerra psicológica, grupos paramilitares, escuadrones de las muertes, aldeas y narcotráfico. Todo esto en nuestra querida América Latina. Sigue la guerra de baja intensidad en sus diferentes modalidades: convencional, no convencional, irregular, antiterrorista, psicológica, contrainsurgente, todo para destruir las luchas revolucionarias, guerrilleras, las guerras populares y antiimperialistas que se han manifestado en América Latina, con la experiencia de las guerras de rapiñas de los años 60, 70, masacres y genocidios en los 80.
Across the globe, from Africa to Asia Pacific, West Asia, Latin America, Europe, and North America, the working people bear the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic. As states and corporations gear up for the new normal, the International League of People's Struggle calls on the working people throughout the world to reject the new normal of the old order that maintains imperialism and all reaction. Let me read the statement of the International Coordinating Committee of the ILPS, which was released today, May 30, 2020. The COVID-19 crisis made an unprecedented impact on the world monopoly capitalist system. It cannot be unmade. Business and governments are now deep in discourse over a so-called new normal. The capitalist new normal is business as usual. It means the same profit-driven system. It means the same exploitation of labor and resources, the same rule of finance capital, the same social structures and relations within and between nations under imperialism and local reaction. The capitalist new normal is trending. It has gone viral. For the United Nations, it means financing for its old pipe dream of sustainable development goals, coordinated stimulus packages including debt reassessment of countries and regional risk pooling, promoting private investments, and the same neoliberal formula of eliminating trade restrictions affecting supply chains. The immediate and medium-term plans are varied. Some governments want outright nationalization. Others opt for equity stakes in private businesses. Some provide loans and or intervene or regulate. One thing is clear, however. It is the people who will pay for the stimulus packages in terms of higher taxes and fewer services, greater indebtedness, and more job and income losses. The capitalist new normal is damage control over an ailing system. It seeks more government intervention, promotion of contact-free economy such as e-commerce, digital payments, telemedicine, and automation, and adding resiliency to the old equation of cost and efficiency. This is back to the age-old practice of monopoly, of capitalist accumulation and concentration, mass dispossession of workers and the toiling masses, and unsustainable practices. We still have to see the full impact of the COVID crisis, as it continues to wreak havoc, especially in the US, Europe, and other capitalist countries. The governments already want to reboot the system, even without clear measures to safeguard public health and livelihood. Identification, testing, tracing, isolation, and curative services against the virus are still sorely lacking. There are no community or people's participation in the decisions of policymakers. Worse, some governments have resorted to repressive lockdowns and militaristic and fascist measures against the people, and in the case of the United States, against other peoples and nations as well. The working class and the toiling masses have long suffered from wage depression. Austerity measures, social cuts, and attacks on their human and democratic rights. The old system does not need tweaking. It needs smashing and fundamental changing of exploitative structures and relations. All short and medium-term measures responding to the crisis must set in motion a long-term solution of changing the social order by the people themselves. In this regard, the ILPS rejects the capitalist new normal of maintaining the exploitation of labor by capital. Further, the ILPS asserts the following calls of the working people throughout the world. Guarantee jobs and income from the state. Implement community health measures and safeguard workplaces while upholding people's rights. Strengthen the working people's role in shaping the economy. Delink the economy from unnecessary sourcing, production and exchange towards centrally planned, balanced, and sustainable growth. Cancel foreign debts of developing countries and nationalize key financial institutions with workers' participation. Implement comprehensive social protection in health, education, housing, and pensions. Ensure protection of women against violence and femicide, especially in the context of the pandemic and homestay. Provide refuge for women victims of violence and their children. Free all political prisoners and democratize the judicial and penal system. And lift U.S. sanctions and promote peace against imperialist intervention and aggression.
Struggle for self-determination, downweight imperialism, pakikibaka para sa sariling pagpapasya, imperialismo ibagsak, pakigbisog para sa kaugalingong paghukom, imperialismo ibagsak. At
We have to be prepared to mobilize our thousands and to fight back, becoming a disruptive force that raises the cost of imperialist aggression. That's certainly our responsibility when this violence is directed against indigenous peoples. It's also a responsibility when the violence is directed against oppressed people in Iran or Afghanistan or Haiti or anywhere else in the world.
Nosotras las que tenemos que luchar contra este sistema y cambiar y erradicar esa violencia sistemática que se sufre tanto en los trabajos, en los empleos, como en las calles y en los hogares. Y hacemos el llamado a todas las mujeres a organizarnos, a acompañar esta marcha.
Las mujeres, los campesinos que resisten y luchan contra las políticas del gobierno de Andrés Manuel López Obrador y del imperialismo.
Stamattina mi sono alzato, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Stamattina mi sono alzato e ho trovato l'invaso. Oh partigiano, portami via. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Partigiano, portami via, che mi sento di morire. E se io muoio da partigiano, Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. E se muoio da partigiano, tu mi devi seppellire e seppellire lassù in montagna. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao.